And we're back. Now, our second topic for the day is critiques, but more specifically, it is how independent and hobbyist developers critique each other's games very, very harshly compared to how they critique a commercial game. And we kind of wanted to explore, why that is. Is it because with commercial games, you've paid money for it, so you expect it to be kind of good, and you don't want to nitpick it because you don't expect things to change? Stuff like that. Kenny wanted to lead off this discussion, so go right ahead.
Yeah, this is this is actually a very good question. It was something that until it was brought up earlier as being one of the potential subject matters, I hadn't even really thought about it. So I kind of stepped back for a moment, scratched my head, and thought, why do I do this? The conclusion I came to is I don't have anything really deep or Freudian about it. It's just kind of simple logic. I break it down into two parts, and I'll just go ahead and cover them in order. The first one, I like to differentiate between independent projects and commercial projects on a couple of very important things. One is being able to get in touch with and contact the people that are involved with the project. And the second one is about the timeline, about, your release dates or whatnot. So going to the first one, it's basically cut and dry. If, for example, I want to, in a commercial project, say, I've seen a screenshot from the latest, Bionic Commando remake, and I want to call up the character artist, and I want to say, oh my god, dude, what have you done? The guy has hot dogs on his arm and, cornrows in his hair, and he's like a Spider-Man reject. What have you done? Please change this. I can't do that. I don't know where the dude is. I don't know if he's in Japan, or if he's in Europe, or if he's in Malaysia, or if he's hiding under a moai on Easter Island. I don't know. I can't get to him. I have no opportunity. With an indie game, it's completely different. I know these people, not personally. Sometimes I only know them by a handle or an email address or such, but I can actually physically get into contact with these people and say, I care about your project, and I have some concerns, or I have some kudos for you. Maybe you're doing something great, and I want to congratulate you on that and say that I appreciate it, or you're doing something I feel is horribly wrong, and I want you to work on it. And, being able to take advantage of that, I feel, is important, as long as the word I'm looking for kind of escape me, but as long as you be courteous about it, and you let the person understand that you're not just jumping down their throat and going, yeah, your game sucks. You be consistent about it, and you voice your concerns, and you say, my other personal rule is just make sure that every time you criticize something, that you praise something, so that there's sort of an equal, karmic balance to it. So, and make sure that your concerns are actually genuine and not, I'm just nitpicking because I feel jealous about your work. And that's where the whole, non-Freudian thing comes into. But the other one is really timeline related. I'm going to go ahead and exclude, there are some like the Ludum Dare and, Speed Hack and other competitions like that, where they only have, 48, 72 hours, 1 week, whatever the hell you have, to make a game. You're under time constraints, and I don't just judge those games at all. If I play them and they're great, yeah, cool. If they suck, no big deal. But when you're making an independent game, and if you're doing it truly like freeware, you have as much time as you're willing to give yourself to make the game right. So under such circumstances, if you have a game and it's not quite right, and there are some glaring deficiencies to it, if you were to release it and it still has those deficiencies, I just feel justified in holding you to that and saying, as long as you were told about this, maybe you should have fixed it. Right or wrong, I feel the ability to do that. I have a little bit of, I give commercial developers a little bit of leeway because, development, the teams are so large. Management at halftime doesn't know what they're doing, or doesn't know what half the people are doing. When it all pulls together, it's a miracle that half of these games are made. And sometimes people make bad decisions, and it's not always the fault of the programmers. It's not always the fault of the directors even. When it all comes together, sometimes I feel like they were under the gun. There were so many different decisions that were made. I can throw these people a bone and just say, well, I had no control over it. I couldn't, stop and walk into their office and say, you guys are doing it all wrong. So I'm willing to kind of gloss over that. And when I play a game like, gotta stop name dropping, but like when I play a game like No More Heroes, that, yeah, it has glaring technical deficiencies. It really does. The frame rate is all over the place, and the controls are, when you're on the bike, are freaking hideous. but the game is so much fun, and there is so, the art direction was so strong, and the style was just so completely off the wall. I'm willing to overlook that, but I didn't have any say in it. Yeah. And so those are my two parallels, the distinctions I draw on the two. So
yeah, I think that's pretty spot on with how I feel. But you also bring up the fact that, like, in the example that you used with No More Heroes, that there are glaring deficiencies, but the game is still fun. Sometimes I feel that kind of critique doesn't hold over the same way with an indie developer. Like, even if their game is fun, for some reason I feel like if you're a developer and you're playing, the commercial game versus the indie game, you still feel, for some reason I feel like this is how other developers are. I don't know, I'm not really speaking just for myself, but if there's a game that is still relatively fun, but there are some glaring issues, it's as if those glaring issues are too much and the game's just funness can't be fun because it could be changed and you could tell a developer, hey, go fix this, so I don't know.
Yeah, I do agree with you in that aspect. I mean, it's kind of problematic. It's just sort of the way you approach it. With an indie game, you usually have like a small team, and in many people's cases, it's just you or me. It's kind of one of those, hey, you had the power to realize this, and I don't know. I don't know if it's justified or not, but sometimes I hold them to a much higher standard because they have the opportunity to change things rather than being kind of crushed under a corporate structure. So
I don't know. It's tough because sometimes, I know being a developer when people are like, oh, why is this way, or et cetera. So, for instance, in Zeb Streamland, it's, why is the saving not a menu, and you just press S and you do it. But, as a developer, sometimes you just get sick of whatever you're working on, or you end up releasing the game, and that's just how it was. You overlooked it. And then people start complaining about it, and you're like, forget it. I don't even want to go back and fix it. I'm so done with that project. Sometimes it's when people give you criticism when you're done. Another thing that I wanted to bring up in terms of critiques is, I don't know about you guys, but for myself, whenever I'm writing up a review, in quotes, of whatever demo someone puts out, I always try and make a point of pointing out the stuff that's good, because what I've noticed a lot in developer critiques of other people's games, I especially noticed this on the Allegro.cc forums when people put games out, is that they're unbelievably harsh with no sort of, and here you go, here's what you can do to fix it, and here's what's really good. It seems like when you're critiquing something, it's very easy to say what's wrong and why it's wrong, and it's more difficult to say what's good and why it's good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's sort of I'm sorry, I'll make this real quick. There's sort of a defeatist attitude, I think, at a lot of places where everybody wants to be mired in this one area where they're developing, but nobody actually wants to see anyone succeed. And so you tend to view things through that perspective, and your reviews can be unnecessarily harsh because, well, damn it, I didn't finish that game, but you did.
Well, it is easier to tear things down than to build them up, usually.
Yeah. And I think the whole, indie development realm or community, or at least even in ours and other people's forums and whatnot, I think the whole community would benefit a lot more from people who can write more positive critiques. Not like positive, like, oh, we love your game even though it sucks, etc., etc. But we like the controls. You have a game, everything is bad except for the controls, and it's like, oh, the graphics are bad, the sound is bad, but the controls are great. And it usually ends up being the graphics are bad because of bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4. The music is bad because of bullet points 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it's like the controls are good, and there's nothing. And I think the community could benefit a lot from the controls are good, and here's why I think they're good, because because they play like you would expect them to, or this and that. Because I think a lot of the problem is when developers get these critiques, it's like, oh, all this stuff is wrong, but the stuff that's right, I don't know why it's right. And I think it's good to kind of explore why stuff is. I just wanted to throw that out there.
For me, I think maybe it's more thinking of it in a different kind of way. Like you're saying criticism and stuff, but usually when I'm playing some indie game and they're asking for comments on some message board or other, I feel more like a beta tester than a game reviewer. On the one hand, so as a beta tester, I tried to tell them what worked and in what ways maybe it can be made better or how they could add more of that element in. But I also say, this didn't work and, this was a bug and that I didn't understand at all why you did that.
There's a lot of that.
So, it's kind of like a different realm. When I'm reviewing like a commercial game, there's always that aspect where you really don't have a clear communication channel with the people who made the commercial game in the first place, like Kenny was saying. So it's maybe I'm just a little bit less vocal about those kinds of issues, except for just astonishingly bad games, or games that are actually really good, but they have something that's just mind-blowingly terrible that it just distracts you from the rest of it.
I think more developers need to do serious critiques of each other's games as opposed to, oh, yeah, I tried your demo and it was cool, thanks. Because that's not helpful. What's helpful is, here's what's good, here's what's bad. Take some time to write some stuff. Even if you're not a developer and you're just, people who play these games, you go to the boards and play people's games, write something useful. It's always nice when you're a developer and you get an email and it's like, oh man, a list of things that are bad. It's like, oh, and a list of things that are good. It's like, this person took the time. I love you. Thank you. Anyhow.
Well, let me ask you a real quick question. Have you ever actually gotten a really super detailed, in-depth review of any of your projects?
For Zep's Dreamland, I have. For other stuff, I know for Ninkatsu, I sort of had from a few of my friends as I was saying, I want to dump this game for whatever, and they were kind of trying to salvage it. So it was like, oh no, here's all the things that are good. But the only game that I've gotten a really worthwhile reading reviews for would be Zeb's Dreamland. I don't know specifically where they're from, but I have links to them. There's at least one guy who did a pretty good review, and it was very objective. It was sort of, here's all the stuff that's good. It's very fun. It's a good puzzler. There are good puzzles, but there's deficiencies, like the menu system is hard to use, and some stuff doesn't make sense, etc., etc. But yeah, so for me, it would be one.
Okay.
What about you?
Actually, only one. I really hate to say it, but the reviews of most of my projects are super polarized. Either I get this email that says "Dude, you rule," or "Dude, you suck."
Yep.
And the only time I ever got one in between was these two guys did their own indie game review podcast. I can't remember the name of it, but they reviewed 2 indie games, and Frenetic Plus was one of them. They actually did a freaking 20-minute review, and it was the most in-depth review I've ever had. Because normally just, like I said, I just get something like, I played your game, I enjoyed it. Nice to know you.
And what's awesome about that is anytime that ever happens, it sort of floors you. Even if it happens more than once, it's kind of like, wow, someone took all of that time to, think about something that I made. Very cool.
Somebody played my game for more than 5 minutes.
Accomplishment, achievement unlocked. Awesome. All right. So I think it's about time we close the doors on this topic.